This is the Droplet introduction course to our form builder. My name is Shanna Pilcher. I'm the customer education manager. I will be leading you through this session. We'll be building out a form together and go over kind of the foundational aspects of the form builder. So our agenda today is first, we're going to go over creating a form. We have several options for how you can create a form. I will be starting from scratch. We'll go over that in a minute. Then we'll move on to our layout, building out what the form actually looks like. And then the behind the scenes, what is the workflow and how does it move to those people? Who does it move to and what are they responsible for on the form? And last, we'll cover visibility, notifications, and other areas of the builder to get that full form. Okay, when creating a form, you may see that we have several options now. We have a new modal that pops up, and this will be changing in the future as well. Right now, the options are to create a blank form, and you'll see that icon there to be able to upload a file or duplicate a form. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth from this presentation to our application so we can start practicing as well. So if I jump into our application, this is what it looks like when you log in. If you don't have any submissions assigned to you at this time, you'll get this cute little message that says that everything's looking good. We want to jump to the forms page. You can click on this plus form button. This is also somewhere you can create a new form from anywhere within the platform. I'm going to be coming here, creating a new form. You'll see you have a few options available that we discussed, duplicating a form that's existing, so already in your organization, importing from an existing file. This can include some of the templates that we have for you inside of our help center. So if you found a template from our help center that you liked, you can import that file, or this would be where you would import a PDF or other image types to kind of give you the base of a form instead of starting from scratch. I want to start from scratch today so we can cover the most and get the most out of it. It puts you right into the builder. This is a new experience. If you've been building forms with us before, it used to open up a details panel for you to give some information about that. This puts you right inside the builder. Now I'm going to jump back to our presentation because I think this is one of the easiest ways to kind of give you an understanding of the visual editor. I'm going to go through each piece one by one to give you an understanding of how to navigate. So first off, we have this return button. If before we were opening it into a new tab, now we are opening into the same tab and giving you the option to go back to the home page, back to the Droplet application outside of the builder. Here you have your form title. When I just created a form, it opened up the builder and gave me a timestamp as the form title. I'm going to want to go back and edit that to whatever the form title is for this form. Here you have your version history, your draft history, and what you're currently working on. So you click that drop down and you'll be able to see if you have any published versions, how many published versions there are. You can go back and look at those versions. You can create a new draft from any of those versions or drafts. You can create multiple drafts, delete drafts. That will all be contained within that version history there. This is our layer navigation. So we have two main layers inside of our visual builder, the form, which we also refer to as the layout, and the workflow. Right now you are seeing the form view. Here we have our save and publish options. If you have made changes, that publish button won't be visible. You'll just see a save button. If all of your changes have been saved, you'll see that publish button. This is the toggle to be able to visit the code editor. So everything that you're seeing right now is the visual editor. If you are comfortable working with code, we mostly use JavaScript, JSON language within our form builder code editor. You can toggle that over and work within that code editor. Here we have our menu options. When you click to drop that down, you'll see like a debug view. That's also where we hold like our translations feature and some other options there. If you were uploading PDFs that you want to be able to use as a link of some sort, you can upload a file there, get the link, and then paste that into something like a formatted text. Here we have our visibility access. So this is another layer, but it exists within the form view. So you're able to access that there. We have our component library on the left-hand side. So all of our component options are available for you as well as a search feature to be able to find the component you're looking for. Inside of this area is what we call our form canvas. So everything that will exist on the form, whether it's for the start step, an approver step, everything that will exist on the form is editable, and you can play with inside of the form canvas. Over here is our navigation menu. So this will show you the sections, the different components. It'll show you the label inside of that section view. There's different drop downs. If you have a very extensive form, this is a great way to navigate to the areas that you want within the form. And on the right-hand side, when we have a component selected, you'll be able to access those component properties. So these will be different for each component that you have, but they will be available for you on the right-hand side. And we'll go over what those properties might be as we jump into it. So I'm going to switch over to our form builder. Let's jump into making those changes here. So I'm wanting to build out this application for Droplet Community Schools. So I'm going to change the name here to be simply application. Here we can see we are in a draft. We don't have any published versions. Everything that we went over before, but now visible here, and it's a blank. We started with a blank form, so we don't have much to go on. We do have 3 components that are necessary for every Droplet form. That would be the submitter name, submitter email, and an action button. Submitter name, you can change the label, but down here you'll see an ID. These all need to be unique. When you drag and drop a component over here, it will create a unique ID for you. You are able to make edits to that. So when you are referencing those later, you'll have something recognizable for you to remember the ID. You'll see that it's set up in without spaces. So the ID doesn't allow spaces. It all has to be one word essentially. And we use what's called camel casing to kind of differentiate the words here. So submitted, capital B, capital N, and submitted by name gives you an idea of what this ID is. I can change this label. Here I'll probably change it to applicant name. And same with the email. I want to change this to applicant email. And down at the bottom, you can see the ID is submitted by email. I don't want to change those because those are the 2 IDs that I need to exist in the form. It helps capture who is submitting that information for them to then be able to access that information later. Okay, and then we have our action button. But looking over here at this application, there are lots of things that I want to do inside of this form. So I'm going to quickly jump over to our presentation so I can show you some of the different field or component types that we have. Those are component properties, actually. Let's get familiar with some of the component types that we have first, and then I'll jump into the properties. So each of these that have a user input are called input fields. We also have a multi-line input that looks something like this. I also refer to as a text area. You can delete here. Other things that we might want are a formatted text. You have your options components. So you give them a list of options and the user selects them. Different types here. Radio button kind of forces the user to choose a single option. Checkboxes allows for multiple options to be selected. And drop down kind of contains both of those into a drop down field. You have your true false, so like a checkbox type. You have tables, date time, signature, and upload fields. This is something really nice to be able to upload multiple files if you wanted to. So this might be necessary later on for a resume or cover letter. I can add those options. So I'm going to keep that in there. So those are our interactive components. So things that users will interact with, typing in, choosing options, that sort of thing. Down here, we have more of our visual or our design features. So spacers that can give you the gap that you want if you're formatting a certain way, dividers, images. I want to grab one of those over here. I'm going to change some of the component properties here. And I want our logo in here, which I did download. So if I come to the source, so that's where the image is, I can open that up and quickly drag and drop that file in here, and you can see a really tiny logo. So I want to make some changes to that. The size, probably at 100% here. Maybe I want it a little bit bigger. I think I like it like this. Formatted text. I want that to span the rest of the width here. So the width is kind of divided out into columns like you would consider in like a spreadsheet or something. And each of those columns, we have like 12 columns that span the entire width of our form. So if you want to kind of cover that full width, be paying attention to how many columns of width you have for each component in a line. And each of those lines we kind of call a section, though you can bring in multiple things into a section. If something spans a little bit more, it's going to wrap down to the next line. And shorter, it's going to just not fill up the full space. And coming to the text, I want this to be a header that says Droplet community schools. It's always harder to type when people are watching you. I can change, maybe I want it to be more of like a normal or paragraph style here. I can put in our address. And that's all of this. I probably want to, there's more options here, which would expand if I had my window open a little bit more, but I want to change the orientation to be centered. Looks pretty good to me, but I am going to bold this. And I'm going to unbold it because I liked it being on one line. Okay. Now into our visual ones. I really like divider lines. I think they add a nice touch. Making it wide kind of spans the whole way, or you can change some of the details here. If I wanted a more stylistic one, I can have it shorter. Change the width, change the color. These are all of the properties. You'll see that the properties change dependent on the component that we have. So I'm giving it black. I'm gonna give it a width of 2. There's also, yeah, that looks fairly decent. I like wide, and I'm gonna give it 100%. Oops. Okay. So there are fun things inside the sections as well. Sections are considered components. You can see them here. I can add a border around the section, which gives you a nice separation between different areas of the form. So here I have applicant information, so I can separate that information out from certification and licensure. Throw in some text here that says applicant information. Bold it. I can mess with some of the styles later. But here I put applicant information, and if I am doing that, it feels repetitive to say applicant again and again. Okay, other things I would want is a street address. So I'm going to put that all into the same section so it contains that border here. Otherwise, I could just, drop it wherever I wanted. Street address, full width, city, state, and zip. Those are usually separated out. So here I can put city, state. I might do a drop down. If you ask our team, we've got a quick way to kind of add those states as a drop down for you. State. And I'll put in I think I got the first three kind of correct there. And another one for zip code. Something cool that you can do with zip code or really any of our input fields is you have the opportunity to throw in a mask or to change the type. So the type right now is allowing text. So anything that you can type on your keyboard will be allowed. If you want to only accept emails, that's a good way to validate and verify that it is email formatting at least, or a number. Here I can put a number down so that they're only able to type in numbers. And I'm going to save some changes here. Okay, now getting into some of the fun stuff. I'm going to skip over the phone number for now because I want to stay, keep this quick. And I'm going to jump into this question here. So are you currently employed by Droplet Community Schools? No and yes, those are the options. You shouldn't be able to select more than one. So that sounds like a radio to me. So I'm going to bring that down. Maybe give it this. I like the horizontal options. I don't need the third one. Here I can say yes and no. I know it's backwards there, but I like yes, no first. And here I put in the label. Are you currently employed by Droplet Community Schools? Perfect. So that's the question. I'm going to do the full way. And then I have another input for years employed. So this sounds like a number to me that people can just freely enter. I'm going to change it to be a number. Coming back here, something that I haven't been doing very well is editing these ID fields to be something that I kind of understand. So if I edit this ID to say currently employed, and then I come in here, let's call it years employed. I can now reference these inside of Logic or inside of emails or anywhere that I want to like grab that value. I can reference the ID, and now that it's something that I understand, it'll be easier for me to work with. So this field should only be filled out if the answer is yes here. So I don't really want it to be visible. Best practice for forms is only giving them the fields that they need to fill out, and not a bunch of extra stuff. It can be confusing for people. It also makes it easier to validate, to make sure everybody's filling the correct fields when they're filling it out. So if they said, if I had it as is right now, it's just always going to be visible. It's always going to be required. And people might get confused and call you, or just put in 0, which is probably fine. But I want to make it a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more, a little bit easier to fill out. And this is where the power of droplet forms comes in. And that's through display logic. So display logic is used to say, like, if these conditions are met, or if they equal something that's true, I am going to show this component. It's now going to be visible. Otherwise, it's going to be hidden. It doesn't need to be seen. So in the display logic here, I want this, which is called currently employed. If currently employed is yes, if somebody put yes, I want that to display. So coming into this component, I can change that display logic. And we have a nice AI logic writer for you, which I'll demonstrate here. So it was called currently employed. So if currently employed equals yes, that's what I want it to display. It gives you a nice formula here. I can say done, save, and I want to make sure that that works. So I can come into our debug view. So this is kind of a way to preview the form, look at it at different steps in the process. Open up the debug view. It's going to open in a new tab. And here I can see what it will look like for the user. So I see Droplet Community Schools, everything here. That field is not visible. If I select no, it's still not visible, which is what we want. If I select yes, then that pops up for them to also fill out. All right. So that's a good representation of a lot of different field types here. Let's maybe get into the weeds with education real quick, because tables in and of themselves are pretty powerful to gather information of the same topic. And I want to demonstrate that for you real quick. So I'm going to grab a table here. I'm going to change this upload to be cover letter optional. Another component property that you'll want to take advantage of is this toggle on and off of required or optional. If it is off, this field will not be required for them to be able to submit the form. Everything is required by default, so you'll want to be aware of that and toggle off the ones that they don't necessarily need. Coming into this table, I can write this as education. Column 1, if I select column, it gives you a bunch of options available just for columns. I'm going to rename this school. Let's go column 2. I can also click back here, which is location. Column 3, dates attended. I want to add another column, degree. And I don't know that I need the word awarded there. I just need those 4 columns. I can adjust, the percentage if I want the school length or width of that to be a bit wider. I can say, I want that to be 50% of the table or 40%. Save that, and I come back here. I can refresh and see it looks a little bit better without that small tight screen, because it's got all these other options here. So it's always good to check that debug view to see what people will be seeing. Awesome. Okay, so we have a pretty good form set up right now. This is an application, and part of the application process is reviewing the application and kind of making decisions on that. So what I want to do is allow for our HR team to, that's not the component I wanted. I wanted this multi-line. Allow them to be able to write notes. So I can say HR, so initial review, notes. This is a great way for our team to kind of connect on those applications that we pass forward without actually having to communicate outside of a form. They can just open it up and review everything all together. I can increase the number of lines here, decrease. I'm going to keep it required. Maybe name, call this initial notes. Okay, and then after it's been reviewed initially, so they either approve it and move it forward for an interview, I can add in, maybe after initially reviewing, we set up a time for an interview. So I'm going to grab this date time component and say interview scheduled date. I want it to be a date and time intervals every 15 minutes. That sounds good. I'm going to call this interview date. So I review it. I'm the person reviewing it. I write down my notes. I schedule an interview. I mark that down and I click submit. Then we have the interview and I want them to be able to write notes. I'm just going to duplicate this field. That's pretty easy. And then I can change this label to say interview notes. Perfect. I think that's everything that I want at this time. I'm going to move over to our workflow now. Now I want to set up that process that I was just talking about. So I don't want it to go, the person that's initiating the form, they're filling it out for the first time. That's the start step. I don't want it to go from start to done right away. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to jump over to our presentation, kind of review what this area looks like. We went over debug, checking validation. You can click submit. It will highlight everything in red that is necessary, so you can make sure that the things that you want to be required are required by hitting the submit when you're in that debug, and you'll also be able to switch steps. I'll demonstrate that as we are building out as well. Moving into the workflow. So this is kind of what we saw. This is a template, so it gave you some steps already, but let's review. So each of these we call step cards. Attaching the step cards to each other are transition paths. You have two different types. So in green, we have our submit paths, and in red, we have reject paths. You can see that these reject paths are going to the start steps, so kind of restarting the process. Maybe they need to make revisions or edits. It's not necessarily halted. It's just going back because some changes need to be made. You might see reject paths that move to a rejected step, which essentially is like a completed, but we're done. We don't need to review this anymore. It's not going anywhere. Submit paths will go from that checkbox icon. So that's you have different action buttons when you are inside of the form. You have the option to submit or reject. You also have the options to save if that's something that you turn on, so people can start filling it out and save their progress, so they don't have to come back or do it all in one. These are your paths. And then inside of the step card, you have the name, you have the status. So if it's started, if it's in progress, complete, or rejected, you'll be able to alter that. If once it's completed, you have multiple steps afterwards, like a completed with revision step, you can set up multiple completed status steps if that's part of your process. And then you have the assignee for the step. Most of the time it will be unassigned at the start because they don't need to be, they are assigning it to themselves essentially by starting the form. But if it's going back to the start step, you're going to want to assign that to whoever submitted that. And then you have other assignees along the way. And that is how to build out the outline. Workflow assignees, you can select them directly in the step card, and it will show you everybody that has an account inside of Droplet in that drop down that you saw, or you can select someone else to put their name and email in there. Then we want to consider what are the conditions for sending this form. My workflow that I'm setting up probably won't have conditions, but I want to show you how it works in case your workflows are more complicated. So first we have step conditions, and these work with somebody, same process for all of these. They start, somebody submits it, but we have conditions on whether it should go to the approver or not. If it's a supervisor, they don't need it to go to the approver, they just need it to go to payroll in this situation. So the person starting this form is a supervisor. The step condition is met because they're a supervisor, so it's skipped over. So that's how step conditions work, and then it moves to completed. Then you have transition logic. And this is saying you have some sort of branched workflow, so multiple options that it could move to from one step to another. And same process, it's starting here. But if the amount of this employee reimbursement is greater than 500, it needs to go to a director instead of a supervisor. So if I have a value of more than 500, it's going to move to the director step instead of the approver step, and then continue on. So those are two different types of workflow conditions that you can experience inside of Droplet. And then combining those if you have a more complex workflow. So jumping back to our application, here is this transition path, which isn't applicable. I don't ever want it to go to completed, so I'm just going to select, highlight it, so I click on it, and then I'm going to click delete on my keyboard. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, spread these out so that it looks the way that I want to. Here is the person initiating it. Once they do it, I want it reviewed. So HR review, I'm going to assign it to our HR person, Aaron HR. And then after Aaron reviews it, I want it to go to the interview step. So this is all of the approve pathway. I'm going to assign this one to the superintendent. And then once they approve it, it's going to go to completed. But let's say we review it and we aren't moving forward with that applicant. I want it to go to rejected. Same with after the interview, I want the option to go to rejected here. Very quick, very linear path for a workflow, but we set it up pretty quickly. Now I want to jump into notifications, which is where a lot of this automation can be really exciting. Okay, I moved forward already when I did this, but it didn't register that. So we see it again. Notifications. When we add notifications, we want to first choose the trigger. So when is this notification going to be sent? At what point in the workflow? The start, the approver step. Here I want it a 1 cent at the approver step, and then 1 cent when it goes to completed. And you'll see different areas. So at the approver step, it's sent after. So it's leaving the approver step. I'm sending a notification saying it's been approved. When it's entering the completed step, I'm saying it's approved and it's registered with your payroll. Then you can choose the recipient or multiple recipients from a dropdown and you compose your message. So this will look very familiar if you've used a mailing system before. You've got a subject line and then a body. Inside the body, you'll be able to throw in any information from the form using those two hashtags that you see, the submitted by name, making them dynamic fields. Okay, I had to move forward so we didn't have to go through that again. All right, now I have several places I want to add notifications. I would love to add a notification when it leaves the HR review step. So I come in, I select this card, and then I can access more details. This is where we talked about before, those workflow conditions. You'll be able to put in those conditions. So if I had multiple steps, you'd see 1, 2, 3 for options that it could go to, and then that's the workflow step. So if there's a potential of this step being skipped, I would put that here. But instead of messing around in here, I'm going to go to the notifications of this step. And I want to add where the trigger is. So I want it when it's leaving that step. So it's been reviewed and I want to go, so I paused, and I'll explain why I paused. When it's leaving the step, it's not going to matter if it is what action was taken on it, submitted or rejected, unless you put some conditions in there. So then I thought, I don't really want to add conditions. I just want it to be when it's approved, like when it's moved forward. So I don't want that to be the trigger anymore, because I don't want to have to figure out what the conditions are for when it leaves that step. But I want it when it enters the step. There's only one way to enter that step, and it's from being approved and submitted this way. So I'm going to enter the details of the interview step, switch over to notifications, and add a trigger here, add a notification on this trigger when it's entering the step. I want this sent to the submitter. So I can choose the recipient there. If I had logic, I could put it here like we were talking about before. But I don't have any, because every time it enters here, they have an interview scheduled. And here I can enter in the subject and body of the email. I'll say, thank you for your, maybe view has been scheduled. Hi. There are some dynamic fields that you can just click without having to do the two hashtags on each side. And one of those is the submitter name. So I can put the submitter's full name here. Thank you for your application. You are scheduled for an interview on, and this is something that we entered into the field already. We called it interview date. Please arrive 15 minutes early and bring your references. Best Droplet Community Schools. So now I'm automating a reminder for this interview to the submitter. Save that. And I can also alter the message that's sent to the assignee. If you've been involved with Droplet before, you probably have seen this very default message that comes through in your email saying that you're assigned a submission. You can change this to say whatever you want it to say. I would always recommend keeping that link there. That's the assignment link that checks the authentication to make sure that you are the person that is assigned that. But I can alter anything else here. Interview scheduled with, and I can put that submitter name here. I can even put in the notes that I put in there so they don't even have to review it, but that is something that they want to review the whole application. So I'm going to leave that as is, but make this a little bit more, a little bit more customized. Okay, other emails that I want to send is if it is rejected. I want to do an automatic rejection notification here. Thank you for your application. Hi. Submitted by name. Let's say, oh, I'm altering the assignment email. It's assigned to nobody. So what I want to do is add a notification for when it's entered into the step to the submitter. And I'm going to say thank you for your application. Hi. Submitter full name. Thank you for applying with Droplet Community Schools. We regret to inform you that we are moving forward with another applicant. I'm terrible at writing rejection anything, so please bear with me here. Please check our job board for any open positions and apply to work with us in the future. I can put a link here. If I come to my settings, add the link. I don't have one on hand, so I'm just going to put google.com. You can see that it's a link. Best. Okay, so now I have an automatic rejection email, which is sent at if it's rejected from HR step or the interview step, because they go to the same place, and that's when it will send. I can also set one up for completed, but I think we have a good understanding of what notifications are possible. Those were just sent to submitter, but I can, okay, I'll go in, do a notification here. Maybe I want to, whoops. I want to send this back to Aaron HR because there are things that they need to do to process a new applicant. New employee to begin onboarding. I can put in other information here. So whoever submitted it has accepted our offer of employment. Please begin the onboarding process. I may also want to include our payroll person because they have some things to complete as well. And change this to just say hello. So multiple recipients, something here, and then I can provide them with the link to be able to view the submission. Okay, notifications, workflow. Now we want to jump into visibility. Visibility. This is what controls what is seen on each step, seen and editable. So if we take a look at the visibility view, you can see that it's toggled over here. Here we have selected components. So instead of that component library now we just have that navigation menu to be able to access any of those areas. You can see which components are selected with the blue outline, or that it's grayed out on the left-hand side. And then over here, we have the step view. So start is highlighted. It's going to show the things that are visible on the start. Everything that isn't visible will be grayed out like you're seeing below. And then we have the different options. So editable, they can see it and they can make changes. Read only, they can see it, but it's grayed out, kind of like that date there. And then hidden, which is unable to see at that step. Okay. So what I want to do is navigate back over to the form. Now that I have workflow steps, I can work on this visibility. So I move over to the visibility view. Something's already selected here, the interview notes, which is something that I want to change the visibility for. So if I'm looking at the start step, I can see that it should be showing as editable. I don't want it to be editable. I don't want it to be seen on the start step. I want it to be hidden. Same with the interview schedule date and the interview review notes. I want those all to be hidden on the start step. For the HR review step, I want everything to be seen, but I don't want them to make changes to it, except for these two areas. So I want to make the review notes editable and the scheduled date editable on that step. And the interview notes should be hidden. Whoops. They should be hidden on this step so I can see that they're hidden now. And for the interview step, I want them to see everything and be able to access this interview notes area. Well, I'm going to save that. Another thing that you can edit here is notifications. This will give you access to, it'll show you all of the notifications that you have set up. So for rejected, I didn't give them a link. If I did give them a link to be able to click on and see the application, I would want to hide a few things from them. And so I can do that really quick anyway, just in case. So I'm hiding each of these areas. I don't want them to be able to see it, but I can show them what they've filled out already. For the completed step, maybe I want to keep those. Maybe the interview scheduled date isn't applicable. And then same with interview step notification here. I can hide these things in case I don't want them to see that information and save that. And then you have a nice tooltip here, which will stay until you X out of there. All right, so now that we have everything kind of set up, I'm going to come back over to our debug view and I'm going to refresh the page to capture all of those saves that we did, and I'm going to review it. So this is what it'll look like to the applicant. They'll be able to submit. I'll see all of the areas that are required. I lied before. Tables are optional by default. Everything else will be required by default. So if I wanted to change any of that, I could. And then I move over to step 1, the initial review, and I can see everything that is editable and read only. And I can see what's required. I can see reject and submit options here. If I click reject, you have the option to put in an explanation here. And step 2, the interview notes, where I'm able to see everything else as well as those options to submit and reject. Something cool that I do want to show you, and I'll go back to the build. Here we have the ability to change the text here. So instead of reject, if I was sending it back for revisions, I could say send for revisions here, or just keep it as reject. And I can also enable saving, which I want to do for applications because they can take quite a bit of time, and I don't want people to lose the information that they've put in already. Okay, so that is how to build a workflow. The last thing I wanted to like briefly cover is Translations, that's an additional feature that is dependent on your package that you have with Droplet, but I want to demonstrate it anyway if that's a feature that's available with your plan. So if I move to translations, I can select a language here. Ooh, not Spanish, Spanish. Once I select the language, it is using Google Translate to power all of these translations. So if there are nuances that you want to cover, you can make those edits inside of here and capture those edits. And I save this. I'm also going to add in another language here. Let's do Japanese, sure. So now it's giving you all of the Japanese as well. We have 2 different languages. I'm going to save it. Now we need a way to access those languages. So coming back to the form, down here are more complex components. We have a language selector, which I'm going to bring up here. By default, it's giving you all of the languages available, which I don't want. So I want it to be able to select English if they accidentally change the language because we've written it all in English. Oh, we didn't do French, we did Japanese and Spanish. And oh, no, I don't want to save. It didn't capture those changes, so I made a quick edit over here, but I'm going to report that little bug. Now, if I come to this preview, I can alter the language. It's going to change all of the labels and anywhere that you put text into that language. It won't capture or translate anything that is input into those fields. And back to English. And if you make changes to this form in any way, I accidentally, I'm going to put emails. I come back to translations. We have alerts that there are changes that have been made. I can click this translate button again, and it's going to give me the change to emails. It's highlighting the area that's been changed. I can mark it off as yes. Same with Spanish. Perfect. Okay, that is probably everything that I had for you all today. So thank you everybody for participating. If you have any questions that came up for you, I'm going to stick around for a while to answer any of those questions. But if not, thank you again for participating today, and I hope this helps you get a really good start on building out forms. We also have open office hours about 3 times every week where you can drop in and have one-on-one time with me or another implementation consultant to go over any questions that you might have. If not, you can always send a support request at support.droplet.io, and our team is very willing to help you